Hey, I'm Ivan. Let's profile a light meter today. What else would you rather be doing? Why bother creating a profile for your light meter? Primarily so that the light meter will match what your camera is seeing and to be able to expose correctly, more consistently, so that we can reduce the amount of photos we take, hopefully. This will save time in post-production. We also do this so that we can control our clipping points within the dynamic range of the camera. This is displayed on the light meter so we can check that we are safely within that range once we take a reading. It also gives us the comfort to push our exposure to either save highlights or shadows, depending on what we decide is the most interesting subject. In this video, I'll be calibrating the Sekonic L858D to create a simple camera profile for the Sony A1. This process is the same for other compatible Sekonic light meters and cameras. I will take you through the process of creating a profile for your meter. I'll compare shots taken with the default profile and then the new profile we create. For your mission, you will need a color checker passport or similar exposure target card. You'll need a pen and paper or an iPad or a tablet to record your readings, and I will copy a template below if you wish to use it. You'll also need the latest version of the DTS software. I was going to be creating a profile using daylight. Then the British weather kicked in. So instead, I'll be using the newer LED RGBs for continuous lighting. Before we get started, we need to make sure we're set up correctly with the camera settings. The Sekonic software uses unprocessed JPEGs. So if you're currently shooting RAW, which I hope you are, now is the time to switch your camera to relatively small JPEGs. On the Sony A1, go to the camera icon, image quality settings, file format, and then JPEG. I choose standard and 12 megabyte files. Next, if your camera has the ability, and most do these days, you will need to set up bracketing. On the Sony A1, go to the camera icon, drive mode, bracket settings. For bracket type, choose continuous bracket, 3.0 EV and 3 image. Go back to bracket settings and let's select the timer at 2 seconds. If you don't have bracketing, you'll need to count 9 clicks of the shutter speed on either side. I will show you this as I do it. You'll want to select single focus and not continuous focus on your dial. This will avoid the camera accidentally hunting for focus during the bracketing shots. Make sure you format your memory card so that you're clear on the shots you've taken and not mix with any others. Now, let's get the Sekonic settings correct. If you've been playing around with a meter, like I do, and you've made lots of different settings, it's best to get the meter back to default settings. I know this can be a pain, but best to start with a clean slate. With the power off, simultaneously press and hold the power and the menu button down for at least 3 seconds. This will bring you to the hardware setting panel. Select factory setting and then yes when you're asked if you're sure. This will reset the light meter to default settings, wiping out any profiles that you've created. So be sure you want to do this. If you've saved your backup on your computer, it should be no problem. I have already created my profile, so you will see that I have my profile setting there. You will only have the default profile. Make sure you're using the default profile. To do this, touch the spanner in the bottom right corner of the screen. Select Set Exposure Profile and make sure that the default profile is selected. Switch to using only full stop increments. To do this, push the menu button On the first screen, select Custom Setting, Increments T+F, and then one step. Switch to using your Function 2 button to toggle Incident and Spot. To do this, push the menu button. On the first screen, select Custom Setting, Function 2 button, and then Incident Spot selection. Let's make sure other settings are correct. Make sure you're on Instant Metering by using Function 2 button on the middle bottom screen. Look at the top of the screen. Aside from the battery indicator, it should be clear. If you are seeing, for example, a just +1, we need to correct this. You should not have P, as this would mean a profile that you created is active, and that would have gone with the reset or choosing the default profile. If you have the just +1 or another number, you have a live exposure compensation in play. To reset this, click on the spanner button bottom right. Set exposure compensation. Enter 0 and press OK. That should remove the compensation indicator from the top of the screen. Now toggle to the spot meter and repeat the same if necessary. Finally, make sure you're using the correct measuring mode for ambient. This selector is located top left. As you can see on mine, I'm set up for flash. Click on the icon and set it to sun symbol and T for shutter priority. Make sure you have a fully charged battery in your camera and light meter. Now you're ready to move on to the next stage. Physical setup of the equipment. If possible, use a sturdy tripod and hang some kind of weight off it to keep it steady, as you want consistent shots. This will save you time in post-processing later. Use an appropriate stand for your color checker passport. Set up the color checker first to take your white balance. Once that's done, flip the passport back to the swatches and use the bottom swatches for the shots. Position the passport so there is no shadow, and then the camera close enough so that the passport, the bottom swatches, takes up at least 50% of the frame. Take the ambient light reading and set the camera to this setting. f8 is a good reading to get. I'm starting with 1/30th ISO 100 and f8. Now I take the reading. And I have f5.6, so I drop my shutter speed to 1/15th. In this case, I have f8 and 4/10. Make a note of this reading on the template. Now I take a spot reading of the third swatch in from the right. Make sure you're right by the lens when you take this reading. In this case, I have f8 and 3/10. Note down the reading as well. You'll need these readings later when creating the profile. Next, take your bracketed shots. If you don't have bracketing, take the first shot, then 9 clicks on either side to give you the 3 full stops exposure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And there it is, half a second. If we go back to 15th, then 9 should come to 1/25th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And 1/25th, there it is. Check your 3 shots on the camera playback to make sure that the f-stop remained constant whilst the shutter speed changed. Once you have these, you're ready to go create your profile. Let's head back to the computer and do that now. Congratulations on taking all your shots. We're now ready to create our profile. You'll want to have everything up and ready. This is the DTS software. You'll want to have your template up where you recorded your readings. And now we're going to go to create new profile, quick mode, select the target you've been using. In my case, it's the color checker passport. Choose next. Now we're going to put in the settings that we took down on our notes. So 100 ISO, instant reading was 15th of a second, f8 and 4/10, and on the reflective or spot it was still 15th of a second, and it was f8 and 3/10. Okay, we're going to go next. And now we're going to choose the folder where all your shots were. I happen to have it ready, so navigate to wherever your shots are. And we want to select all three. So put a little tick mark in each of these boxes and click next. Now, although it doesn't look like anything's happened, we want to put the cursors, the green cursors, to match the cursors on the color checker. Be as accurate as you can. They may not be in the same place as I have them, but they'll be nearby. This one's a little bit tricky. A little hard to grab sometimes. And the fourth one is here. They are all numbered just in case you're unclear. We've got little numbers here. Now, assuming you shot on a tripod, they should all be the same. Once you've selected all three, click next, and your profile should arrive. There we go. Now we're going to save this first of all. I already have the profiles made, but we're going to do it again. I'm going to call this Simp Day Test. Okay. Now we're going to go in and edit that profile. So choose the profile and click Edit Profile, and we're going to change the exposure range. You need to choose the profile, and then you want to play around with this to maximize your dynamic range and your clipping points. I tend to push it pretty far, but it's up to you. I'm going to go right out, maybe not to the end, but near as about. And then these are your clipping points, or your comfort zone. I'm going to put it around about there. This I'm going to take out to right to that mark up here, and I'm going to push this out to around about here. And now you can see it says the dynamic range is 8 stops and the clipping points are 7.5 stops. I feel comfortable with that. Others may disagree, but that's what I work with generally, and it's a guesstimate. Okay, now we're going to click back and we're going to save as. You could overwrite if you want. I normally do, but lately I've been saving as, so I've got the original. So we're going to save that as, and in my case, like I did with my actual profile, I put in Ed Simp Day Test. I'm going to say OK. And that is now your, this one here then is going to be your profile that you actually work with, okay? So first thing we want to do is now plug in your light meter, and this should refresh. Okay, and now you can see that I have been working with my the one that I've been taking all the shots with that you'll see. But to transfer to the light meter, we're going to highlight this one. This is the one we've just created. Oh, we don't want to put it in there. Let's clear that. We want to put that into slot number 3. You'll probably put it into slot number 2. Do not overwrite your default. That's always a sort of fallback. You'll put it in slot 2, but for this purposes, I'm going to put it in slot 3. And now I'm going to transfer that to the light meter. Yes, say OK to that. And now this should slide into slot number 3. And there it is. And now when you start your light meter, you'll have, and go to your profiles, you will have your version of your profile in here. Okay, now let's move on to the test shots. Now that you've created your profile, it's a good idea to bench test it to see what results you're getting. Again, make sure you have consistent light. If not, you may want to use continuous light in your property or your studio, like I did. 1. Using the default profile and exposure compensation set to 0, take an instant reading. Set the camera and take a shot. 2. Using the default profile, take a spot reading, highlight or shadow. Set the camera and take a shot. Now, switch to your new profile and repeat 1 and 2 above. Next, using only your new profile, repeat 1 and 2 through a variety of exposure compensation. I suggest from -2 through to +2. See my template below and modify how you see fit. You can see that I only dealt with the positive numbers as I know that my camera is underexposing. Then repeat this process with flash if you use it. Prior to looking at your results, you will need to make sure that your monitor, Mac, PC or tablet has been calibrated correctly. In order to do this, I recommend you watch this excellent video by Art is Right. I'll put the link in the description below. Now, let's look at the results in Lightroom. This is where we start to get a little subjective, but on the whole, you want to choose the photo that needs the least amount of editing and has the full ability to change through the dynamic range. So now you've taken your various shots for your exposure compensation, so you can decide on which one you want to work with. Hopefully you filled out this template. And we started off with the default profile, and I took an instant reading and a spot reading at various levels, and I'm going to go through those photos right now. So 6098 and 99 are the default profile. So this was instant, and then this was spot, and they came in at a 30th per second at f8. This is f7.1 on the incident, and then we moved to the new profile, which is obviously whichever one you've chosen, and I worked my way through, as you can see, 0, +3, sorry, +0.3, 0.6, 1, 1.2 and 1.5. My screen has been calibrated, so I'm now going to choose which one I want to go with. So as we work through, that's incident at 0, spot at 0, instant 0.3, spot 0.3, instant 0.6, spot 0.6, and incident 1, spot 1, 1.2, spot 1.2, spot 1.5, sorry, instant 1.5 and spot 1.5. So I decided, to me, and let's just go by 6106 and 7, that's this one here. So this is instant and spot 6.3 and 7.1. I decided that +1 was the best for me, and looking at the shadow detail, it's all there. And if we compare, I'll drag that. That's the incident, and that's the spot. So it's all there, all the highlights. It's all looking good to me. So it is subjective. You may decide you want to go with brighter or darker compensation, whichever you choose. But to me, these all look this looked about good for me on my monitor. So yeah, And if we go back to the spot, which is, I normally use spot reading, then, and if we play with exposure, all the highlights are still good. I can take my highlights right up or right down, bring the exposure back, highlights back, and then shadows. You can go right up without, and right down without losing any detail. You can still see it. There's a little bit of loss right there, not much. Again, let's look at the highlights. Let's go here for the highlights. Let's go right down and right up for the highlights, and there's still there's a little bit of blowout here, but it's minimal. This still looks good, so I'm happy with that. So for me, I've decided on +1 as my working exposure compensation. Hope that all makes sense. It's somewhat subjective, but you want to choose a good benchmark to start. Once you've chosen that image, that will be the exposure compensation that you will work with on that camera from then on. I recommend now do a quick field test with daylight, continuous and flash to ensure all is as it seems. So now you've got your shiny new profile, which should show at the top here. You've got P for your profile that you've selected, just to be double sure. Set exposure profile, and that's your new profile. Okay, which will show up as a P because that's engaged and live, and then your exposure adjustment, whatever you figured that out to be. So I'm using 1600 ISO because it's fairly low light in here. And first of all, I'm going to take a reading off the grey card for the mid-tone. Okay, so here we go. And we have f4.5. Okay, and f4.5, I'm going to put that into memory. First of all, sorry, I'm going to set this as the mid-tone, set mid-tone, and set from current measurement. And now you can see the color scale. Hopefully you've got the green zone, which is your safe zone, and then you should see the amber, which is your full dynamic range and your clipping points, and then red is, you know, dead zone. Okay, so I'm going to store the 4.5 in memory. Ensuring. Okay, and now I'm going to take a reading off the white card here, and we have F9. I'm going to put that into memory, and now I'm going to take a reading off this cheek here. Okay, F7. Okay, F7. So I'm going to put that into memory. Now I would at this point just do an average, but first of all, as there's no readings within the red zone, I'm going to take a shot of the sky outside, and we have F57, and you can see that that's clearly way up in the red zone. I'm not going to put that in memory, but so I'm going to say average now, and it'll average all the memories, all the stored memory readings. And we have F6.3. And you can see that as the large cone in between the three readings on the scale. So I'll also take one shot of that so that you can see what we're talking about. Now that you've got your profile, hopefully you've gone out to do some tests before and after. These are mine. So here on the left, what I did was I did a 2 spot readings. I did one for highlight and one for shadow right here. Okay, this is with the original profile, the default profile on Sekonic, and if we zoom in, that's pretty dark. I've done nothing else to these photos. And right here on the right is with the new profile. Same measurements, and you can see that you can actually see some of the detail in that black, which is lost here. All in all, I think a much better exposure, which you can do more with. Okay, on to the next. So on the left is the default profile, and on the right is with the new profile. Quite a stark difference on this one. This is taking a reading off the cheek here. Okay, spot reading, and you can see 3.6 on the default and 2.8 on the new profile. Now if we get in a bit closer, we can take a look at what's going on here, and a much better exposure on the new profile. And once again, I did this with that was for highlights. This one is for shadows, and I took a reading off the grey swatch right here for shadows, and then the same for although it's got the same reading, this was with a change of light. Okay, so if we go in, there's not much in this one, quite surprising, but still I will go with the new profile. If you look at the background, you can see this is slightly darker, not by much, but still. So the default performed better on the shadows. Okay, so that's using a no profile with, you'll see the exposure adjustment of +1. Okay, if I show you the actual shots, without my hand in them, there you have. Okay, that's it for this one. Then off you go and have some fun taking photos. Hopefully you should now be more focused on and shoot less to get more with the results you're looking for. Thank you for watching, and if you liked this video, remember to subscribe and spread the word. You can also join my Facebook group at the link below. Have fun. Bye bye.